Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Punditviews. I'm Jacob Christner, the pundit's pundit himself. And tonight I have an absolutely special guest. And it's like, this is one of my very favorite ones. I've been wanting him for a while, but everything just kind of crosses wires, all that kind of stuff like that. He and Scott, between them, have kind of been my mentor since I've kind of started all this. And they have really helped. I get advice from them at times. I listen to them. I like to watch them also. They have been a combination of about 80 to 90 years in this industry, and I've been probably a good 3. So it's time for me to learn about this. So I've already had Scott Morgenroth on. I'm going to have now the second half of that, the second half of the two-headed greatness. George Eichorn. How's it going?
What an introduction. I'm doing well, Jacob. Thank you so much.
I'm not as good as Denzel at it.
Yeah, and we appreciate being on tonight. Thank you so much. I appreciate those kind words. And between Scott Morgenroth and myself, oh my gosh, about 90 years probably of experience.
Wow. Now, where did you get your start on this? How did you get it all started here? Where are you from originally?
Okay, so I grew up in Detroit. I was a resident, born in the city of Detroit, and went to high school in Detroit, public school system. And then I went to Wayne State University, which is the biggest university in the city. Obviously, it's a Division II school, so it doesn't get hardly any recognition sports-wise. But they have contributed a few guys to the NFL, or nobody to the NBA that I know of. But anyways, I studied at Wayne State University, and I graduated in 1980 with a bachelor's degree in communications media.
What happened to journalism?
Well, it was called electronic journalism. So the curriculum that I had, Jacob, was cool because it was print and electronic. So for example, I would have some classes that were like deadline reporting classes, like as if you were at a newspaper. Yeah. And then I had other classes that strictly were radio, writing news copy for radio.
Okay.
And one of the opportunities, I got three. I actually got 3 opportunities in college. You're not going to believe this. I wrote for the South End, which is the student newspaper. I covered sports.
Right.
I had an internship at the public radio station in Detroit that was connected with Wayne State called WDET. Right. And I called football play-by-play for 3 or 4 years on that station for Wayne State football.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And one of the things I knew about Wayne State, actually, because I'm from Quincy, Illinois. So we used to play in a couple of different times. They played Wayne State, and then in the playoffs 2 different times they played Oakland.
Oh yeah, awesome!
They played Oakland University. First time around was a 1-point loss. Second time, I think they got a win. They're both home games and both apps. See, this was at a time when it was called Memorial Gym and not Pepsi Arena.
Yeah.
So what they would get. So, I mean, it was like 2,200 you could fit in there, and it was rocking. It was the times when they did not have the seats all renovated and beautiful and all that stuff. It was all rickety seats, and you're 10 to 12 years old. You don't care if you're going to fall on your face. Right. It was all rocking and everything. And that place was, I would call that a smaller version of Cameron Indoor back in those times. Oh, my gosh. It was just rocking. And it's like now it's kind of renovated. They call it Pepsi Arena, and they have to kind of bring people back again. They're just not that good. But it's like, I just remember those days, and I saw Oakland twice, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, Oakland's got a really nice arena. Yeah, that's in a city called Rochester over near me. Wayne State, now they built a brand new basketball arena with the help of the Detroit Pistons. So the G League Motor City Cruise plays there, and the Wayne State. It's a very unique arrangement.
Yeah.
Pistons helped finance it, and it's great. They got out of an old building called Mathi Gymnasium, which is real small, like you described in Quincy.
Sure.
But now
Yeah.
Wayne State got the brand sparkling new, again, small side, 3,000 seat maybe arena, but still good enough for them and the G League team.
Yeah, the thing is, there's two parts to my thought process with it. I know you got to make it sparkling, especially if you're going to have Pepsi as your sponsor, and it needs to sparkle and look better. But there is just those times, the predated air conditioning, hotter than all get out, sweating, and it's like, and you're down 20, they're down 22 points, and they're coming back, and the place is going insane. And there's like, you don't get, and it's like, I saw the videos. The Hawks won 4 games at the buzzer this year or something ridiculous. And there's probably like 300 people there. And it's just not the same anymore. No. It's just like, it's tough to watch.
You're right. You cannot take that atmosphere and replicate it with a brand new place or a remodeled place. I agree with you. Those sweaty gymnasiums, high school, I had that at high school at Denby High School in Detroit. Yep.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So overall, then where was your first after college? And you said you went to Wayne State.
I went to Wayne State University, yeah, and I actually my first job, a couple of them. The first one was a bowling, believe it or not, a bowling newspaper hired me as the associate editor.
Like a news, was it a whole newspaper? Was it like a newsletter, or what was it?
Well, no, it was an actual newspaper. Bowling, Detroit has been one of the, us and St. Louis, the two biggest bowling towns in America are Detroit and St. Louis, if you didn't know. Yeah. The Hall of Fame is in St. Louis, so they get the edge over Detroit. But I knew this guy that ran the newspaper, and he was the publisher, and he hired me as associate editor, didn't pay much. Then I got a job also with the Detroit Monitor, which I'm still writing for after all these years. I started in 79. My first article appeared in 1979 in a weekly paper called the Detroit Downtown Monitor.
And I'm born in 78. I was born in 78, so that says
it. There you go. My first article, and actually I lucked into that job because the sports writer went away to college. Actually, he didn't go very far. He went to U of M and moved to Ann Arbor, but he didn't want to write anymore. So then the editor hired me as the sports columnist in the Detroit Monitor, and didn't pay him too much, but it was a lot of fun. It got me into a lot of places, a lot of credentials.
And that's great. And it's like, and I want to ask you this question. Like I said, I like to ask you questions.
Sure.
And Scott, both questions and everything. We're going to ask this while it's on the air and all that kind of stuff. I remember the years I wanted to be able to get in, because I worked at like Fox 61 Chattanooga, like for a short time as an intern.
Yeah.
And that went very interestingly when they were done with me the minute that I was doing the I was doing a teleprompter one night, fell asleep.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
and then the things are going off the words are going off the page. You remember how those went? When you turned the little wheel and
yeah.
I think they were done with me after that. But no, I wanted to ask this part. How did one become a physical editor? Not an editor of the newspaper by itself that you have to come up with the stories, but how does one become an editor? Because I'll tell you this, I was reading at 3 and spelling at 4. I spot everything. I spot every period, every spelling mistake. I spot it all better than the editor in your whole world. So I'm just being cocky with it because I know I am. So I'm going to say this. How in the world did I not even get an interview? How did it? Is there some kind of politics to the editing thing that they don't want to get somebody on the outside to come in on that job or something?
That's a very good question. I never got hired by the Detroit News or Free Press. I don't know. I really didn't try really hard, but those editors, I tell you, those were primo jobs to get the editorial jobs. Yeah, and you're right. It is a very tough position, and you have those skills. You just admitted it.
Oh,
and and so they should have given you a sniff. They should have given you an opportunity. I didn't really want that, to be honest with you. I mean, my title was sports editor, but mostly it was just laying out the sports section in the Detroit Monitor, which was just 2 pages. So I wasn't in the true sense of a sports editor like and I know today.
Yeah.
And those guys that sharpened their pencil and correct all the mistakes, and now of course it's all computerized and digital, but I still shake my head, Jacob. I'll be honest with you. I open up the Detroit newspaper and I can find mistakes, and it just gnaws at me. I mean, I was like you a lot. I mean, I did not like to see the mistakes, and I still occasionally do see them in the big papers here in town. We're lucky to have 2 newspapers still in Detroit, the News and the Free Press.
Oh my God! Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but that being said, no, I mean, if you were like that and you were more of a nerd when it comes to editing, then you definitely should have gotten a chance.
Oh my God, what business? Well, I remember this one business chronicle that it was a small business chronicle around Atlanta. This is about 10 years ago. I wanted to be able to try to get in through that way. So I took one of their free papers onto the thing and went through the whole darn thing with a red marker. And there was a ton of them. Then I went back and put my number and my name and phone number. Call me. Let's just say I didn't get the call. They probably were irritated that I did that.
Yeah, they might have been, but boy, they deserved it from what it sounds like.
Well, it's lazy. It's lazy to be a bad speller. To me, it is. It's like maybe I'm a master speller. Maybe that's my thing. Maybe not everybody is. You can go use spell check. But to me, it's lazy if you're going to be doing something like this, that your paper where people get paid, 60, 70 grand or whatever, 50 grand, whatever, and it's lazy and they let for mistakes.
I have a fellow named Roger Smith who has been editing my stories for years and years and years. And trust me, I am not happy to tell you there are many times when he says, George, what are you saying? Did you know that you misspelled Sergei Fedorov? And, you forgot the right name for Juan Guzman or whatever it was. I mean, and Roger has said, and Roger, thank you. Roger is still there after all these years at the Monitor, and he saved my butt many, many times from, errors that I've made. So I know what you're talking about.
Fedorov, Fedorov. This is in case you missed on that.
Yep.
Oh,
and
yeah. But no,
and like I said, I've been through that. But trust me, even on my columns, my stories, Roger has done a great job watching over my stuff.
Oh yeah, I remember when I was in school, I was in typing class. It was during the time of computers. This is one of the first few years, the first 3 or 4 years of computers they did instead of the typewriter. So I get in there. I was always so cocky with my spelling, and I didn't even have that great of grades in school. But I just had to have the one thing. So I get in there, and he says, okay, you're going to type it out. Okay, do spell check. No. Do spell check. No. I mean, everybody else would do spell check. I wouldn't push that button. Finally goes up to me one day, why don't you do spell check? Because I don't have to. It's right. No, you do this. You do that. I mean, he thinks I'm being a smart ass, which I am.
Yeah.
And it's like, and he's like, no. And it's like, no. And I said, sir, it's right. He looked and he'd get pissed off. Finally, he says to me, okay, I'll give you a deal. I'm not going to give you will not follow my directions. I'm not going to give you an A. I'm not even going to give you a B because you won't follow directions. But I'll give you a deal. I will give you a C if you do this and do not miss one word all year. But if you miss one word the rest of the year, you're getting an F. I said,
my gosh.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. He did that to me. I didn't miss a word. He had to give me the C. Yeah, he had to give me the C.
Good for you, Jacob. My goodness.
But it's like, I could have easily just followed the directions, get the A or B. I didn't. I already knew it was right. I'm better than the damn spell check.
Yeah, right.
But I didn't miss a word. But it's like I think I get that way sometimes. I was like when you have that skill.
Yeah.
But no. But where you? But you did this type of stuff. You've been an editor, correct?
Been an editor, and then I also dabbled, in the broadcasting part, in which we didn't talk about yet. Yeah. So I had like parallel tracks because basically I couldn't decide. Did I want to go newspaper sports writer? Did I want to go news broadcaster, sportscaster? So I dabbled in both. So after that Wayne State football job, I got another break and I was hired on the ABC owned operated WXYZ radio in Detroit, very famous station.
Yeah, I know about that.
I mean, those call letters are precious. I mean, you can't put a price tag on those call letters.
Exactly.
WXYZ. Dave Dials, a very famous sportscaster, was here. Al Ackerman worked here. Well, I was on the radio side. A guy named Ron Cameron, a former umpire, believe it or not, minor league umpire, but a sportscaster here in Detroit, hired me as his producer. So I produced the sports talk show. It was on from 6 to 8, and then first it was on, I think, 5 to 7, and then it moved to 6 to 8. Well, long story short, I had this producing and call screening job, and I lined up guests. I had phone numbers for Bowie Kuhn, for Howard Cosell, for Jim Campbell. I mean, Willie Mays. I mean, you wouldn't believe the people that we put on this show, and I had access to their phone numbers. And Detroit, a lot of Detroit people, Tommy Hearns, Emmanuel Stewart, Hilmer Kenty, a lot of the boxers. But we were, like I said, me and him put together this list of who are these great people we wanted on as guests. And sometimes we struck out, but most of the time we were successful. So I was behind the scenes. Well, one day Scott Morgenroth came as an observer. He was brought on board by a guy who was a guest on the show that night, a hockey fella named Sam Greenblatt. And Scott knew Sam really well, and Scott's dad knew Sam real well. Well, Sam brought Scott into the studio where I sat to watch the show that Sam was on. Sam was on with Ron Cameron, and we were behind glass. And then I got to meet Scott 43 years ago, and the rest is history. So he came as a observer the first time, and then actually he got to learn how this production work was done behind the scenes, and he became my backup, my fill-in producer. And eventually when I left, he took over for a while. So, this was again at WXYZ, ABC owned and operated radio. And
that's cool.
A short story here. Dick Vitale. Now get this, Dick Vitale, who had never done broadcasts before this, Jacob.
Yeah.
Ron Cameron knew him really well, and he was the University of Detroit Titans college basketball coach before he coached the Pistons. And so, anyways, they struck up a friendship, Ron and Vitale, and Vitale asked how about if I be a substitute at the station? And I think, this guy, Ron Cameron, is the one that pushed Vitale into trying. Well, he came on as a guest occasionally, but he came on as a host. This is the very first time he ever hosted a program, was on my station, our station, WXYZ. And now look at him. Cool. And now look at him. Look at him now, as they say, right?
And Vitale, and this is the thing. You could tell Vitale enjoyed broadcasting more than he did coaching. Because,
yes.
I mean, by far, because Vitale is he is a ridiculous, high energy, high impact type of guy. And yet other than the cancer, he's been very healthy for years. He does coaching like about 4 or 5 years. He has ulcers. He had to have Pepto-Bismol. He had to have like milk and magnesia right next to his bench. He admitted this himself, but he did broadcasting, and it's like, and he just nothing but enjoyed it. And it's like, and it shows what the job will do for somebody.
Right, exactly. And even the Detroit Pistons owner, Bill Davidson, had to tell him, no, we can't even keep you anymore, because he was so high-strung after every game, win or lose. Especially the Pistons were losers. Yeah, that sounds familiar. I know that. Yeah. I mean, the last.
I remember when they won, though. So I mean,
no. Yeah, and I don't want to dwell on that, but I mean, Dick had a very bad stretch with the Pistons. Conversely, though, he was great at University of Detroit Mercy. He got them into the NCAA several times, the tournament. And produced great guys, John Long and Terry Tyler and Earl Curitan, and a lot of guys were onto the NBA because of Vitale and his assistant coach named Smokey Gaines.
Did he enjoy it, though, is the question. That's what I was saying.
The college, yes. Oh, very
No, no,
much
I'm talking
so.
about coaching and coaching. Yeah, but I mean, in Detroit, as far as the pros.
Well, yeah, I mean, when he first started out, I mean, that was the Pistons were just that was to me that was a great hiring to me. Now, a lot of
Hmm.
people said it was a huge gamble, and it was moving him from college into the NBA. No NBA experience, but the Pistons were very excited. The fan base was very excited. Those days they were playing in the Pontiac Silverdome. They put this huge curtain up and
Hmm.
made it more intimate. And one part of the Silverdome was where the Pistons court was. Um, and you know, the revitalization of the Pistons included Dick Vitale. But again, you know, in his second year, I mean, the losing ways continued. He was so stressed out. He was, like you said, he was a basket case. He couldn't handle the pressure anymore. And it just became too much for him. And the Pistons had to say, I'm sorry, it's not working out. You got to go. And it was really sad because, like I said, he made his name with the Detroit Titans, the
Hmm.
university, and a private school, Jesuit school, Catholic school,
Yeah.
and did well with them. And then, like I said, the NBA was just like burnout, and he couldn't handle it. And but I tell you what, he started writing for sports columns for Basketball Times, which is a national newspaper, and then obviously ESPN called, and before you knew it, I mean, that man was on to fame and fortune.
And the one thing about the Dick Vitale, this is the one deal I noticed with him. I grew up with. I started watching sports in '84, so I'm 6 years old.
Yeah.
So, but so you get to, and we didn't have cable in our house, so I'm going to grandma's house. You get my point. And you get to those. The
Yeah.
biggest thing I noticed with him, when you listen to Tommy Heinsohn, but when you listen to Tommy Heinsohn,
Oh yeah.
the first few years of Tommy Heinsohn, it sounds like he just wishes he was coaching Larry Bird. just, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
There was two different parts of Tommy Heinsohn. There was three different parts. There was calling Trapuka to Puker. That was the first one. Or
Oh
Sigma
yeah.
Sigmer. It's just like there's that guy. Number two, basically in his own head, just laughing and ha-hawing as Larry Bird gives another pass between somebody's legs, and
Yep.
wishing he had Larry Bird as his as his point forward. And three, watching guys like Spud Webb and wishing he had that kind of guy as a point guard because he loved little bitty fast guys.
Oh yes, he
But
did. Yeah.
but you could tell Tommy Heinsohn was a coach. Even at my young age when I was absorbing sports, you could tell he was a coach. The way he brought the thing up. You could
Yep.
not tell. Like, okay, you couldn't quite tell if you did not grow up with John Madden. That you just thought he was a fan.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just thought he was a fan. He did everything in such simplistic views. You
Right.
couldn't tell he was anything more than a fan if you did not grow up watching him be a coach. That everything, because he did it such a point. He'd go boom, boom, bang, and he went this way, boom, boom. Watch Merlin Olsen. He was going through the whole play.
Right.
And
Right.
he's going through the whole play. So did Dan Deerdorf. But you get to those.
Super analytical stuff. Yeah.
Yes. And there's like, when you do those, that was Dick Vitale. He was boom, bang, baby, and all that
Yep.
kind of stuff. They made a difference. Some of these guys made a choice to not be so analytical, to just be with the guys. It's like he did not dwell on not being a coach anymore. He's just a fan now.
Exactly. No, that's a very good comparison you make with Heinsohn and Vitale and Madden. That's true because the exuberance, the passion, the fun part of it, I mean, that never left Vitale. In fact, that was part of him, and it always will be. I mean, yes, he was a good, and the analytical stuff, I think a lot of that came out with his writing because he used to do those preview magazines. I mean,
Yeah.
he didn't write all the previews, but I mean, Dick really became a good writer. I mean, it started in Detroit when he wrote for Larry Donnell's publication called Basketball Times, and then he wrote for Ron Cameron's publication called Sports Fans Journal. And before you know it, I mean, he had his annual publications, his annual draft previews, his annual whatever, NBA and college preview magazines. I mean, so I guess more of the analytical stuff of the side of Dick maybe was concentrated more on that part of it. But no, I agree with you. He was more along the John Madden, not the Tommy Heinsohn kind of commentator.
And
Yep.
I always thought of Heinsohn. Like, it's like I've always thought, it's just like, I'll just say another name from wrestling. Okay, Bobby the Brain Heenan. I always thought of Bobby on when he was announcing, playing his show, playing his character. I always
Yeah.
thought of him as a manager, a retired manager that still thinks he can have one more in him, and I'm gonna get my next client.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always
Exactly.
so I'm gonna. That's just the character though you're playing. But I just thought of that. I think of Tommy Heinsohn as someone who didn't want to coach anymore, but he thought, well, if I just had this one shot here, I would do this, and he bring it with this. There are one, and then there's Dick Vitale, who's a fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just don't even know. And there are just those announcers. And those announcers are special. And the same with Madden. Madden never acted like a football coach.
Oh,
because
no,
he did not want to do it anymore.
Yeah. Yep. And I wanted to show you a picture. I think hopefully we can get it on from my book. And we're going to talk about my book.
We'll talk about it in a second. Yeah.
But look at this. That's Dick Vitale holding a basketball. Check out those plaid slacks he wore at the University of Detroit Mercy.
Yeah.
And that's Dick holding that basketball there in a promo photograph for my book that I got permission to put in my book.
And he looks like Jack Ramsey.
Yeah. Look at him there. And
I know.
And I got to mention the other guy. You wonder who's sleeping on the plane over here? That's the longtime Pistons announcer George Blaha.
Oh,
and it was just funny because he loaned me so many pictures, and I thought, you know what? That's unique. The guy's sleeping on one of many NBA trips that he took, sleeping on the Pistons private jet. And I thought, you know what? I'm putting that one in my book too.
Is George still around?
Oh yes. Oh God, yes. He's been 50 years almost. I'm going to tell you a quick story. A lot of us are very hurt and very upset, Jacob, that the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame has not honored him with the Kurt Gowdy Award. George has been doing it for almost 50 years here in Detroit. And I'm sorry, but it's high time that he got the honor. So now people have nominated him over the years, and I'm not trying to complain because people nominate people for all kinds of awards, but this man deserves the Gowdy Award. Come on. They're giving it now. They're giving it to other contemporaries. And don't get me wrong, Doris Burke, she deserves it. And, you know, but ladies and gentlemen that are so much younger, reporters, sportscasters than he. And Walt Frazier got it recently, the New York Knicks color analyst. Okay, again, Clyde's doing great. He had a great basketball career. He's in the Hall of Fame, of course, you know, already on his playing credentials, but now he's in as a broadcaster. But please, if anybody's watching out there, help us out. We want to get George Blaha from Detroit into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Get him that Kurt Gowdy Award. Help me out. Thank you.
I think, and I'll tell you this, I mean, just what you're bringing up with George Blaha, and I, as I said, I'm just going to give a theory to something like this. It always will be.
Sure.
I always have a thought process that, I mean, well, for one thing, Doris Burke, we've seen her on ESPN for a while. You know, and then you want to know Walt Clyde Frazier, guess what? He's been in New York forever. That's just the media capital of the world. What is Detroit? Does it suck? Yeah. Does it suck? Yes. Does it terrible? Yes. I mean, is it not fair? Absolutely. Especially when you work as hard as that thing is. Like, you guys deserve the Gowdy. I'm telling you for what you guys do. You know what I mean? Yeah. You guys deserve it. You and Scott do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the flattery, but I agree with you. I mean, Detroit is a mid-market, and we used to be in the top 6 in the cities population-wise in this country, but we have lost so many people. We went from 2 million to about 700,000. So I know our market size has shrunk, but that doesn't matter. George, voice of the bad boys. Okay, they won 2 championships, and then we won one with Wallace and Chauncey and those guys, Tayshaun. So I mean, George has called 3 championships. The thing is, though, George has never called national play-by-play. He was never on loan to the networks. There you go. Another reason some people say
Heinsohn was all the time.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, Heinsohn wasn't, and you got Rick Barry, and you got a lot of these guys that have, you know, and of course, you know,
Rick
I know,
Barry.
I know, I had to mention that. And of course, guys like Dick Stockton and Musburger and those guys that have called the NBA. I mean, Enberg and Gowdy and you know, Al Michaels, and I mean, there's the list is a mile long. Of course, they're going to honor the national guys. I know that, but anyways, I'll get up my soapbox.
No. I keep your soapbox around, but I'm like, you brought up Rick Barry, and now I'm like,
I don't
horrible.
think Jacob. I don't think he ever won that award. Thank goodness he didn't deserve it.
No, my God. I mean,
No.
it's like they would have laughed at him. It would have just been like,
Yeah.
because I heard him with Bill Russell, and you talk about two guys who wanted to kill each other.
Oh.
It sounded like it, and it sounded like it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. When those two were on, they were on ABC. Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and it was just terrible to listen to. It's terrible to listen to those games. But I wanted to say this. Now that we were going to bring this part, I want to get to this thing. You have a book, and we were talking about that book there. I wanted to say this. What got you interested in? I mean, who did you have this interest in your head to write that book that you've got in your hand right now? Or did you, or did someone get you up to this or whatever? Because I know you've got a special forward there.
I do. I have a special forward by my longtime friend and Scott's friend as well, Ernie Harwell, the late Ernie Harwell.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I wrote a column for the Detroit Monitor every week, Jacob, for years and years and years. It was called Sports on Television. Yeah. And I loved it. I could be a critic. I could be a PR guy, maybe for some things coming up, and for guys like Blaha, I could do interviews. I mean, my editor is a fellow named Horace Mann. God rest him. He's up in heaven now. Yeah, Horace gave me free reign to write about whatever I wanted on sports on television. So, like I told you earlier, I had 2 pages in the Detroit Monitor every week. One of it was my regular sports column. The other page, I loved it just as much, if not more. It was sports on television. So during that time, I was on the media mailing list for so many of the networks, and so much information was passed on to me because I was like a regular media critic, if you will, for sports on television. So I got my hands on photographs and press releases, and I had all this stuff at my disposal. And I said to myself, George, look at the stuff you're sitting on. Not only the Detroit guys and the Michigan guys that have been on the air, but you have access to all the national guys as well. And when I say national, Jacob, I'm only interested in the guys that started in Michigan: Dan Deerdorf, Dick Vitale, Gus Johnson, Mike Emmerich, I'm talking about, and of course, so many others. And then we had guys that formerly played for Detroit or Michigan teams. Wayne Walker of the Lions went on to CBS television. Ron Kramer of Michigan football went on to call CBS football. So, I mean, I had all that stuff at my disposal, all these guys with ties to Michigan and Detroit. So I thought that combined with the local guys, I mean, heck, it wasn't hard to come up with a book like this. And I got a lot of support too from people here in Detroit that loaned me photographs and stories too.
By the way, Will's got a question for you.
Will, thank you. Is there one athlete or person you wish you could have interviewed, dead or alive? Yeah, I do have to tell you, and that guy was Mickey Mantle. I started following the Detroit Tigers in baseball back in 1967, and wouldn't you know, Mickey hung it up, I believe, after the 68 season. And Mickey Mantle would have been one of the guys that, obviously came through Detroit, if you will, to play the Tigers. He wasn't from here, obviously, but I have to look back and I got to say, yeah, that would have been one hell of an interview. I wish I could have sat down with Mantle, because there would have been a lot of questions I would have wanted to ask him, especially in relationship to, if you guys don't remember, Denny McClain, who won 31 games for us in 68, served up a fat one, a gopher ball to Mantle so he could break. I'm not sure who he surpassed in the all-time total with that home run, but it was something that McClain won't want to admit for a long time. But yeah, he served a fat one, a juicy one up to the Mick. And, Mick told him exactly where he wanted it in the strike zone at Tiger Stadium. But anyways, that was just my Mickey Mantle. I would have loved to interview him.
Mickey, I'll tell you this, though.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this, though. Mickey, you talk about those types. And I'm going to ask this. You think about this, though. He had to come through because it was the American League. This is not American versus National League at the time. Knowing that there was during the time that there was not a whole, otherwise the trades. There was trades instead of free agency and all that stuff.
Yep.
Do you ever get into your head that what if there was a bit of free agency and what if there's a little more power for the players back then? You could have possibly seen a Mickey Mantle of Detroit and all those things. Or do you like the idea of the old times when, you had a little more, what's a good word to say? A little more loyalty.
Loyalty and longevity. Jacob, I long for those days. So I'm old fashioned in that regard. The trades were fine. The Tigers were not pretty. The Tigers, Harvey Keene for Rocky Colavito. I mean, that was an unbelievable trade back in the day. But I mean, for the most, and Denny McLain. Let's talk about that. They traded Denny McLain to the Washington Senators. And listen to and they got quite a haul back. They got Joe Coleman, who became a 20-game winner in Detroit. Aurelio Rodriguez, one of the best gloves I've seen outside of Brooks Robinson in that era at third base, and a slinky Joe Brinkman at shortstop, who was a hell of a player. And these are guys that Billy Martin managed when the Tigers won the half pennant, the division, back in 71, I believe it was. Anyways,
go ahead.
Anyways, I long more for that. I mean, Al Kaline spending his whole career in Detroit. Steve Yzerman spending his whole career in Detroit.
Yes.
I mean, to think that Gordie Howe, listen to this. Gordie Howe sort of pulled a fast one on the Red Wings, because Gordie Howe officially retired from the Red Wings and was given a front office job. But after, I believe it was less than a year, he said, screw this.
I want to play in Hartford.
You made me vice president of what?
Yeah.
He felt like a mushroom, like they were throwing what crap on him in the corner, in the dark corner of Olympia Stadium where he worked. He had an office. Yeah. So Gordie, as you probably know, then teamed up with his boys and played for the Houston Aeros and the WHA and also the New England Whalers.
And Hartford,
and became the Hartford Whalers, correct. So he ended up back in the NHL, as you know. But
52 years old, he was out of the 52 years old, he retired.
Yeah, but that was his choice. When he left the Red Wings, that was his choice. But most of these guys like Lou Whitaker, Alan Trammell, Al Kaline, Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, they never got traded. They were here forever.
And I get it. And I get this because I had the Bears, and I had the Bears in the 80s. And it's like I had the whole offensive line was 10 years. 10 years. I got 8 of them. of them. Same offensive line.
Yep.
Yeah, the same offensive line. The same defensive line outside of a couple of replacements for 10 years. You know, they ended in like 9. I got 9 years of it. It was like 93 when it was all gone. Was
Jim McMahon there most of those years?
He was there till 88. And then he finished in 88, and they traded him to San Diego, which was the stupidest trade I've ever seen in my life.
I remember that was not a popular move. No.
Well, that was stupid. Well, Jim McMahon to me is the absolute smartest quarterback for his punk style that I've ever seen in my life. Yes,
punk style's a good word for
it. They did plays, and here's what I was talking about. I watched that game with San Francisco this year, the NFC title game.
Yeah.
And they lost all their quarterbacks, and they had to bring a guy back in that had a popped elbow and couldn't hardly throw it anymore. And Brock Purdy, and they had this.
Right,
but
Purdy, yeah.
Mike Ditka's, not saying Mike Ditka did anything, because Ed Hughes sure as hell wasn't making any plays. That was McMahon and Peyton doing all that kind of stuff out there. And the thing is, if McMahon and Peyton are thinking of these things that you see now, the reversals, Peyton throwing to McMahon for a touchdown, where in the hell was Shanahan?
Yeah.
What was where is the genius?
Exactly.
Where's the genius of this? This is 40 years later of all of this. Where is this? It's like, why are you running it up the middle 3 different times? Oh, I'm out of ideas. Meanwhile, you've got the Bears 40 years ago in an era that didn't even have passing, doing reversals and double reversals and doing that stuff under McMahon and Peyton. And it's like, that's not like Ditka. I love Ditka as a coach, but he was not an offensive minded guy.
Oh gosh, no.
No, he wasn't an offensive minded guy. So it's like, that's McMahon out there doing that. Ed Hughes was a quarterback in the 30s.
Yeah.
He's a quarterback in the 30s, like 1938.
Right.
He is not making those plays.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, if that's the case, Shanahan has the ability. Where was that? Here's the thing. You're down 14 points. Why not give them a shot? Why not do a couple
Try
reverses with
something different. Exactly.
yes. It's like,
I
okay, you
mean,
get picked off, big deal.
right, right. What do you got to lose?
Yeah.
As they say. I mean, really. But yeah, I mean, McMahon was a great, great guy. I mean, wild, crazy guy, of course. The headbands and all that. But he was
Oh,
something else.
see, the thing is, it's like, I look at it all now. It's like you've got Dan Campbell, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with that. And I think the Bears and the Lions eventually. Now, I think the Lions go first before the Bears do. It's
I
because
think
I
so.
still don't trust that they did Justin Fields right. I don't trust it.
Right.
You've seen me from the get-go through this whole thing. I'm not just being a BSer with this whole thing with Justin Fields. I'm not happy. I love the kid, but I'm not happy with the way the fans wanted him forced in. Not happy with how they've done it. No system for him.
Oh no, I agree. I agree with you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not been handled the best way it should be. That's
Give him
for darn
Dan
sure.
Campbell, and he gives him everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And
But you still got a good, valuable quarterback, no question about it. A very good leader too. He is, and
they could screw him.
Tremendous raw talent. Yeah,
and they could screw him though. That's the whole point. And
I know.
and it's like they could screw him, and it could get to a point where Mitchell Trubisky would be there longer, and Justin Fields if he has another bad year, and there was no reason for this.
Right.
No reason, none.
Yeah.
And no reason. It's like all you have to do is sit him for a year. I mean, you tell me Andy Dalton couldn't win 6 alone? Andy Dalton? You tell me he couldn't win 6 alone? I mean, he's the greatest, but I mean, the guy could throw 375 sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
He can't do 6 alone. I mean, Justin Fields averages 155 yards a game.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not in this era. You can't do that.
But I agree. No, I agree.
And I want to ask you. I'm going to ask you a couple questions when it comes to journalism now.
Yeah.
We're going to wake up tomorrow. You have been in journalism over the 40 some odd years.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
You've been in journalism. I'm just going to give it to you right now. I'm going to give it. I will say we'll pick at anything. Fox, CNN, MSNBC, PMSNBC, any of those types. You know what I'm saying? Any of those absurdity related news things. Now, Scott brings up Frank Reynolds a lot. You know who that is.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to bring this. Do you think that you would act like if you would get the reins of those big networks that you'd try to be like Frank Reynolds again and try to bring the truth to the journalism?
If I had the reins, I sure as hell would. I'll be honest with you. I definitely would. Look what's happened. I mean, even on the local stations, I mean, we give sports like 2 or 3 minutes. The stories that were missing, the in-depth features were missing on sports. I'm talking about people associated with sports, athletes, success stories, people that have overcome so many hardships and so many setbacks in the world of sports. And all these stories we're just ignoring. Now, I will give our friends at ESPN credit, because 30 for 30 and I mean things that they have done with special features. Yeah. And remember HBO Real Sports with Gumbel? Yeah. I mean, when we had good stuff like that, Jeremy Schaap and his father Dick Schaap. Now those were investigative reporters. I know that Scott can't stand Howard Cosell, but Howard Cosell was a journalist. Howard Cosell was another one who dug for stories and dug for information. You might not like his voice, his style, whatever, but he was one who broke the death of John Lennon that night during the middle of a broadcast, a Monday Night Football telecast. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget when Frank Reynolds, I'm glad you mentioned his name. He was on the air live when President Reagan was shot outside that Washington, D.C. hotel where he gave that speech by a fellow named John Hinckley. Yeah. And they were live on the air. And they were talking about the people who were shot. One of them was Press Secretary James Brady, as you remember. Yep. And James Brady was in very, very serious condition at the hospital. He got the full front, even more so than Reagan did, and the 2 cops that I believe were shot. Well, one of them might have been a Secret Service and one was a DC cop. So there were 4 of them that were shot. Frank Reynolds got some misinformation from his producers. It was really bad. He told the nation that Brady was dead. And the look on Frank's face when he was given further information and clarification, in fact, Brady had not died. He was still in very critical condition, and they had him on the operating table. But he took off his glasses and he said, folks, we got to get this right. We got to get this right. And he was just livid with the people at ABC News behind the scenes that was feeding him this false information that Jim Brady had died. Yeah. And I'll never forget that. And I have the utmost regard. I'm glad Scott mentioned him and you mentioned him, because Frank Reynolds is one of my all-time favorites. And another fella too, by the name of Jim McKay.
Yep.
Okay.
I remember much. I think everything you bring up, I get the feeling that's why he loves pundits so much. Scott does. I think that's why he does, is because we're not doing investigative journalism, but we're seeing real stories.
Yeah.
Yep. Bringing real stories to the thing. And you know what it is? What I enjoy with it, and that's why before we got Jordan, I'm very happy to have Jordan Long on now. I think he does a really good job.
Yeah.
It's like, but when we were asking you, before I asked you first, and the thing is, and I was proud of that thing, but the idea of that kind of deal is just the fact that we're not doing a story based off of a Republican or Democrat or anything.
Yeah.
We're not doing it. It's like, we're not doing it to get it because, we want it like this. It is because it's not fair, or it is, or there's this, or it's like, guess what? It does not matter if it's been on Fox. It does not matter if it's been on CNN. It doesn't matter. And this is where I ask you these questions on this, because I'm tired of this common sense being politicized.
Yeah. I agree. No, there's just not enough common sense journalism. There's not enough fairness. We all know that in today's journalism. But as far as sports journalism goes, oh my gosh. I mean, it is so lacking. I mean,
what happened? What happened?
Well, I think what happened is they got caught up in the craze of everything's got to be instantaneous. Everything's got to be lighthearted. Everything's got to be funny, or you got to find a character or whatever they're looking for, a personality. Those people are important. Don't get me wrong. We just talked about one, Jim McMahon. And I got one here in Detroit, Mark the Bird Fitterich. Yeah, that's all good.
76.
That's all good. But there's other stories that are important as well. And I think, even though Detroit is now mostly a mid-market area, I think the newspapers in here town have done a decent job at writing more journalistic pieces. I mean, we got Pulitzer Prizes that have been won by both our newspapers in town in Detroit. You got a guy like Mitch Albom, who has a lot of respect. Mitch is a very thought-provoking journalist and author and broadcaster.
Tuesdays with Maury. I love that movie, by the way.
Yep. And we got somebody like him here. God rest his soul. We just lost a great one, Jerry Green. Mm-hmm. Jerry Green wasn't afraid to take on the Lions, Pistons, Tigers, Red Wings. He told it like it is. Jerry Green, 94 years old. God bless you. You're now in the upper parts, I hope. And I
knew Jerry Green was going. I knew he was going the minute he wasn't going to the Super Bowl. I knew his time. I knew it was time.
Exactly, Jacob. 56. We can't say that enough. 56 straight Super Bowls before he missed February's game, the last Super Bowl.
And you knew it was time, because that's probably a time he's probably going to hospice or something.
Yes, he was in hospice. He wasn't actually in hospice, but he was at a senior living place. But he had had tube for oxygen and everything. He just wasn't looking very sharp. But I didn't think he would go this quickly after that Super Bowl. I was shocked that it happened that soon, because they had just moved him into this a nice senior assisted living place. But that being said, all I'm saying is Jerry Green. Now, you talk about a columnist that didn't mind telling it like it is. And we've had others in Detroit, Shelby Struther and Mike Downey and Drew Sharp, and Mitch Albom, like I said. And now we got another one here, that's really good. And there was several of them. I don't want to mention their names, but there's still some guys here that tell it like it is and tell the truth behind these stories. And good journalism is what I'm saying. So, yeah, it's changed tremendously.
And it has. And it's like, And you see me on the Twitter, and you see me on the social media and everything. I go after the idiot journalists. I go after Olbermann. I go after. I mean, they even maybe it's like I can say F off. I mean, I do, because quit. Okay, you don't like Trump, big deal. This is the thing that gets me with the journalism, and this is what I wanted to bring up with this. There's something called a congressional record. I don't care if you don't like him. This is where the journalists fail. I don't care if you don't like him. There are things in that congressional record that he did do, and it shows, and you will hide it. Not you, but you get my point. These people will hide it. They will hide. There was a thing in these. There was a executive order from Trump that lowered insulin prices. They erased that so that Biden can make it look good, and then they pretended that Trump never did it. That is journalistic malpractice. I don't care if you don't like him.
That's exactly right. You can't do that. Erase the record and wipe out everything. And it's just craziness. It's just stupidity. And no, I there's no fairness anymore. We know that in today's modern news technology, cable outlets and all that. There's no fairness. We know that.
Well, it's why I do Sideline. That's why I do
But anyways,
Sideline.
I mean, getting back to sports, I'm just saying, we have so few of those people that are really into the journalistic part of it. And like I said, some of the names that we mentioned, of course, were some of my favorites: Dick Schaap, Jeremy Schaap, Album, and of course, my friend Jim McKay. Oh God. I mean, this guy was incredible. The Olympics, when he was thrust into that Munich massacre and had to be on the air for ABC. Okay. After that terrible terrorist attack on the Israeli athletes. I mean, Jim just did an unbelievable job. I mean, he was, to me, Mr. Olympics. And obviously, NBC got the contract and promoted, and Bob Costas came over, and Bob's been a good journalist too. I'm not dissing him at all, but I mean, there was nothing like what Jim did, and Roone Arledge, of course, and what Roone did over at ABC for sports was just tremendous.
Well, it's why I was Sideline. It's like, and I haven't ever tried to I've never put in one resume for Bleacher Report, for WWE, for ESPN. I've never done any of that, and the reason being is I know what's going to be found on my social media, and I don't care. The thing is, maybe the thing is, these are the points. I'm not trying to offend people. Aim to be offended. This is my point. But see, I'm no journalist. Pundit for a reason, because I'm punditing the pundits. I'm going after them. I'm going after Stephen A. I'm going after Kendrick Perkins. I'm going after them because I'm tired of hiding things. Maybe I'm not a journalist. Maybe could I be a journalist? Sure. But I could, but as the thing is, if you ask, could I? Sure. But there's just, it's another job. It's another time. I need to get paid to do that. But I have a respect for actual journalists that are doing their job. And the one thing about Sideline that I know, maybe it is a startup, but I'm not going to get called I'm not going to get called to erase something. I'm not going to get called to apologize, because it wouldn't happen anyway. But I'm not going to. And when we're doing all, you remember what happened with Jalen Rose and that hostage video looking thing that he got during the NBA playoffs last year?
Oh, yeah.
And that looked like a hostage negotiation, a hostage thing. And it's like, I'm so sorry. It's like, no, I'd walk off.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, guess what? Money's a cage. I want plenty of money in my life, but money can be such a cage.
Yes.
To your mind and to your everything. And it's like, Jalen Rose has said a lot worse that he's allowed to say. But then he said something that they didn't agree with. That's what I didn't like.
Yeah.
And it's like, you either got to give him the whole thing or none of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And don't play this, that little game that they love to play. I mean, it's I can't stand it either.
And George, this is the thing. It's like, I want you, before we go tonight, I want you to show your book. And
okay.
I want you to show that.
Okay. So and just a little bit more on it. Baseball, football, basketball, hockey. Ernie Harwell. Just a few of the names coming from Detroit. I mentioned a couple of them earlier. Dave Dials, we had a Tiger broadcaster in University of Michigan football, Ty Tyson, who was the start of all this broadcast stuff in Detroit. But I'm telling you, for a market this size, we've had some incredible announcers.
Yes.
George Kell, Ernie Harwell, Paul Carey, Ray Lane, and then in hockey, guys by the name of Bruce Martin and Bud Lynch. Both of them have won the Hockey Hall of Fame Broadcast Award. Basketball, I already mentioned George Blaha, and we have Mark Champion, and we've got a lot of great guys over the years. And then in the football, obviously, Bob Reynolds, Frank Beckman, and Van Patrick, and Mark Champion, Dan Miller are some of the football names we've had, plus Bob Ufer for Michigan football.
I love how you go Ufer.
Bob Ufer. He was the biggest homer around, Jacob.
Yeah.
Biggest homer around, Bob Ufer for U of M football. And he didn't care. He didn't care. He had a horn. He put a I don't know what kind of horn you'd call it, like a horn on a bicycle. Yeah. And every time Michigan scored, he'd be pushing this horn, or his producer, on the broadcast. I mean, totally.
I love how it's not Ufer because it's not Euchre.
Yes. Ufer. U-F-E-R. Yeah. Not Euchre. Yeah. He's still going strong in Milwaukee.
89 years old.
Yeah. Yep. Amazing. Yeah.
Well, but, George, it has been a pleasure and an honor. And that book, and is your book in like Barnes and Noble or any of those places, or?
Yeah, you can still get it online mostly. Scott has a link on the South Florida Tribune website to purchase it. You can also go to eBay and Amazon too, and you can find it. Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. Thank you for having. Thank you.
It has been an absolute pleasure. It's an honor. Yeah, you guys have been awesome with me, and I appreciate that. And I look forward to keep seeing you around and everything. And one day, if you ever have time, I mean, when there's a break or anything, I might have you on Pundit.
I'd love to be on. I know I can't be a regular, but I'd love to be on as a guest.
No problem. I'll get you as a replacement, just like for a week or something.
Sounds good.
You have a wonderful night.
You too. Thank you, Jacob.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.